We hear it when we hear local control. We hear it when we hear, let's keep New York City out of Long Island. These are just catchphrases. And what Laura's saying, we all know it. We've all seen it. It's just wrong. Just wrong. And we need to be a voice, and we need to support people that are going to change the message and make it the message we're trying to deliver here. With that, we have Jasmine Pena. Jasmine is owner of a deli, a food center, a landscaping company. She supports local business. She's a financial analyst. She's a vice president in the settlements team of the Mizuho Securities LLC. She's a leader. She's demonstrated her ability to bring change, and she's also running for town council. Just as I mentioned, we have a number of Democratic candidates here, from Christine, Jasmine, Susan, and Seth. So another one of our candidates, but she's here as a member of the Long Island Latino Alliance, and she's here to speak to us about racism right here.
First and foremost, I would like to thank BMDC for always showing support and for having me here tonight. And thank you all for being here and taking some time to show support as well. Oh, sorry. I can be loud by myself, but
Come on, be as loud as you can be.
my name is Jasmine Pena. I am first generation American and first generation college graduate. My parents came from the Dominican Republic in 1985. Their culture, what they know versus what I know are two very different things. So when we speak about hate, I'm going to speak about self-hate, which is taught, especially in the Dominican culture. Growing up, having straight hair was, was something. How would I say it? It's a beauty trademark. So my hair was considered ugly, and a lot of the times my mom would blow dry my hair because straight hair is considered beautiful. My daughter inherited my curly hair, and I remember my uncle came to visit, and he was like, he said, she's so pretty, but she has pelo malo, which is bad hair. And I brushed it off because it's the norm, and I learned to love my hair on my own, but my boyfriend took it very, offensively, and he said, "Aren't you gonna correct him?" And I'm like, "No, he doesn't mean it. They're just, uneducated." And he's like, "No, I need you to speak to him." And I really thought about it, and I'm like, do I want my daughter to hear that when she's growing older, and how it affected me growing, having to spend hours at the hair salon because, my mom wanted to straighten my hair all the time. And I did address it, and I was like, her hair is beautiful, and it's curly, and, you shouldn't say that. And he was like, oh, I didn't really mean it, that it's nothing. And I'm like, no, but I don't want you to say that again. So that's one instance. And then, coming from my culture and the Dominican population, a lot of us are darker. So I am a lighter skinned Dominican, and they're like, oh, you're more beautiful, or keep out of the sun. And I never really thought about it when I was younger. But when you get older, you start to realize a lot of Dominicans have hate for their skin color and for their background. And right now we have a huge war between Haiti and Dominican Republic, and a lot of it has to do with hate crime. The Haitians are darker, and the Dominicans do not want to kind of fuse the cultures and the race together. And what they don't know is that a lot of them are from African descent, and there's, how would I say it? The fear is taught. So when I had asked some Dominicans as to why they don't want to associate themselves with Haitians, and they were like, oh, well, when we helped them fight the war, the French war, they took over the whole island. And that was one aspect. And then also, when we had our president Trujillo, he wanted to lighten the population. So I know at one point, he took in a lot of Jewish people from the Holocaust and brought them to the Dominican Republic. And at first I thought, oh wow, like, you know, he has a heart, but his intention wasn't to help the Jewish population. It was to lighten the Dominican population.
Oh my God.
You know, these are things that I have seen in my community, and I'm not saying that a lot of Dominicans are like that. No. And I feel like also the younger population are more educated and more open to other races and other cultures and other religion and whatnot. But it is a continued issue, and it happens here as well. So, in aspect of systemic racism, I work for a corporate bank in the city, Mizuho Securities, and in process of interviewing incomers, we had one particular individual who was reviewing the resumes, and he saw a resume with a young female named Shaniqua. And he looked at the resume, he's like, oh, Shaniqua, the parents did a disservice and tossed it out. And I was infuriated, but instead of just staying shut, I went to HR and I reported him. So I'm not sure what the background, you know, I'm not sure what that discussion led to, but he was eliminated from ever interviewing or being involved in the interviewing process. So as the ladies have echoed, I'm just gonna read something that I was reviewing and trying to get data from. This is a report from the FBI Supplemental 2021 report. It showed that Black victims were targeted the most, with 3,277 incidents, up from 2,871 in 2020. So this is between 2020 and 2021. Crimes against white people followed, with 1,107 in 2021, up from 869 in 2020. Gay men were the victims in 948 incidents, up from 673 in 2020. And Jewish people were targeted in 817 cases, up from 683 cases in 2020. There were 746 attacks against Asian people, a record for the group for a single year, up from 249 the previous year, a sharp spike. These numbers identify a few trends when held up against 3 decades of data. For one, new records were set. It was the worst year for anti-Latino crimes and anti-Asian crimes, and more than double that of the previous year for Asian victims. It was the second worst year on record for Black victims and had the most offenses committed against transgender. Next, surges of violence are lasting longer. According to Brian Levin, the director of the Center of Study for Hate and Extremism at California State University, the data has historically shown that a cycle of violence occurs when a bigoted spotlight is focused on a certain group. But the cycles of violence usually brought on by a catalytic event are now remaining longer, and in some instances pushing totals up as well. For example, hate crimes against Muslims rose after 9/11 as a result of Islamophobic rhetoric. But the spike in crimes against Muslims decreased in the months after October 2001. In June 2020, the height of Black Lives Matter protests was the worst month recorded for Black Americans. But the hate crime continued at a high rate through November 2020, with similar trends in anti-Asian crimes in 2021. One explanation for this trend is that politicians, social media influencers, and pundits are keeping stereotypes elevated longer. Hate crimes in this decade are acting differently because they're being impacted by a very hostile social media, political, and cultural environment. So, how many of you here have experienced hate crime of some sort? Okay. So, as I mentioned, it says that politicians, it's a trend in politicians, and this in particular is speaking about the years 2020, 2021, and I feel a lot had to do with our former President Trump. And I want to remind you of some of the racial comments that he made and during his presidency and around his election as well. So, Trump addressed the Republican Jewish coalition on December 3rd, 2015, calling himself a negotiator like you folks. One of many Jewish stereotypes that the Manhattan real estate mogul dropped throughout his speech. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't negotiate deals? Probably more than any room I've ever spoken. In a New York Magazine profile published in November 1992, a year after Trump divorced his first wife, Ivana, Trump was quoted dispensing his wisdom about how to handle the fairer sex. You have to treat them like, yes. In May 2018, Trump called undocumented immigrants animals at a meeting with reporters in the White House. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are, he said. These aren't people, these are animals. In August 2016, Trump told black voters, you're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? His claim was untrue on many levels, not least of which was that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate for young black people at the time was only 19.2. And in March 2020, as the coronavirus pandemic ravaged the country, Trump insisted on calling the disease the Chinese virus, which is why I believe there was such a sharp incline in Asian hate crimes. So every time I drive down Sunrise Highway and I see the Trump supporters there, it's concerning to me because what are you expressing and what are you teaching your children? You're supporting someone maybe based on your political views, but you're supporting someone who's divided this country for so many years and continues to do so. And we have to, take it home and teach our children that it's not about a political party. It is not about your beliefs. Well, no, it is not about your political party, but it's also, you should teach your children that values are important, that respect is important, and that you should love thy neighbor as, many religions teach you. That is all. Thank you.
Jasmine, Pena, thank you. Our next speaker is Kerrie O'Neill. Kerrie has a bachelor's from NYU. She has a master's from Columbia University. She is the chief program officer and has 15 years of experience with the LGBTQ network. Kerrie O'Neill.
Can you hear me okay? In the back, you can hear me? All right, excellent. So I have a hearing impairment, so I can't hear out of my right ear, so I'm very sensitive to that. And sometimes when I'm presenting, which I do a lot, sometimes I'm too loud because I'm making up for it, and sometimes I'm too quiet. So I'm going to ask my friends in the back, please tell me, speak up or lower. Excellent, thank you. So I'm also going to stand because I have some show and tell as well. So hey, so my name is Kerrie. I use she and her pronouns. As my friend mentioned earlier, I'm the Chief Program Officer for the LGBT network. A lot of letters, what do they mean? So that's the L is for lesbian, G is for gay, B is for bisexual, T is for transgender, okay? Q, we oftentimes use that, usually stands for queer or questioning. We don't always use the Q because for many of the folks in our community, queer was a word that was used in a negative way. We serve a lot of older adults, and for a lot of the older adults that we serve, that was the word that was used right before they were beat, or right before the cops came in and raided the only safe place where they can hang out. So that's why we use LGBT network. So what I'm going to do is I could talk a lot about the increase in hate crimes. I think my colleagues up here already did that really well, so thank you for making my job easier. What I do want to talk about, I have to do a couple of statistics there, but I'm going to focus mostly on legislation, okay? Because yeah, hate crimes, they're on the rise for all groups. We know that it's, you know, double, triple, quadruple the numbers that we're seeing, right? So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about legislation. So in 2023 alone, there have been over 520 anti-LGBT proposed laws in our country. Over 520. So just to give some perspective, that is more than the last 5 years combined. All right, so we talked about codifying, right? Codifying racism, codifying hate, all right? So this is literally, this is what was proposed. Now, they didn't all pass, thank goodness. Right now, the count is, I believe, 72 have passed, which is still obviously way too much. But there is so much power. We said words matter, leadership matters, words matter. So whether or not that legislation was actually enacted, the words that were said while they were being proposed, right? People hearing, wow, the hatred against me or my loved ones, my friends, is so strong that we want to make this law, right? So that has a lasting impact, all right? So those are the only numbers that I'm going to mention today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go right to what can we do. All right, that's why we're here tonight. I hear this is almost a gift.
Exactly why we're here.
That's why we're here. And you care. This town cares. I hear this is double what we normally see, right? All right, so that's a sign. More than double the folks that are here. You care. You want to make a difference. So thank you. I got 2 hands. I clap for you. So let's get down to what can we do, because we have to do this together. Okay, I'm going to speak about an LGBT event that's coming up, but as I talk about it, you're going to hear it's a together thing. All right, so on October 11th, it's a day called National Coming Out Day. Just so I know how much I should talk about it, can I see a show of hands if that's something people are familiar with? Okay, so I am going to talk about it. Sorry for those who already know it. So, okay, NCOD, or National Coming Out Day, it was started back in like 1988 as a national day, hence the name, right around the time that it was the first LGBT march on Washington. Although at that time it was the gay and lesbian march on Washington. We weren't including bisexual folks or trans siblings and so on and so forth. Anyhow, historically, it was a day where LGBT people would come out as LGBT. And that's a good thing. That's to say, hi, I'm a lesbian. My name is Kerrie, I'm a lesbian. Nice to meet you. And that's important, right? Because it raises visibility. It takes the scary. Like maybe lesbians are, I'm not saying you thought we were scary before, but if we did, maybe we're a little less scary, right? So there's value, right, in that, in raising the visibility so that we are your sisters, we are your teachers, we are your council members, hopefully. So there's that, okay? But what my agency does is something a little bit different, okay? We still encourage folks to come out, raise awareness, visibility, will be less scary, but we encourage everybody, regardless of your identity, to come out on October 11th, not necessarily as LGBT, although you can do that, come out in support of safer spaces for LGBT people. ourselves, right? We could just go around, we do a lot of community education in schools and in workplaces and all over. We could do it ourselves, but that's not gonna make a difference. We have to organize and mobilize. So what we do is we have an NCOD campaign. We put together a little box. Can you hear me without the mic? Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're gonna hold it? Yeah. Oh, this is so nice. How about now? Seriously, if your arm gets tired, let me know. So we put together this little box, and you can, well, I have to do this. You can sign up on our website, weartheribbon.org, sign up, and we send you this program in a box so that you know your community, you know your institution, you know your group, you know your school better than we do. So we give you all the tools, all the visuals that you need so you can implement the campaign in your own place. All right? So I'm going to show you some of the stuff that's in here. We have posters. Oh, this is the Spanish poster. In English and Spanish. Intersections. We got to talk about intersections, right? So here's an example of a poster that we send out. Again, it's in Spanish. But it says National Coming Out Day, coming out for safe spaces. That's what we all want, right? And with the intersection. So that's one thing that comes in this box. English version. So, I'm going to take up a lot of space, but I'll put it back. Organizing manuals to help you do it in your organization. One specifically for youth when we go to schools, and then one's for, I don't know, democratic clubs. Or any kind of civic group, okay? That comes in there. Rainbow ribbon, trans pride ribbon. I'm wearing one. We send ribbons, safety pins, so you can put them on. Palm cards. Important. Education, education, education. Right? So this is pretty. Lots of rainbows. We love that. But what does it mean? We have educational palm cards. It's got the poster on the front. This is the why. Why does this matter anymore, Kerrie? It's 2023. We don't care about the gays anymore. Did I mention 520 proposed legislation? Yes. So what we're seeing, 76% of kids in schools are being bullied. 98% are hearing anti-LGBT stuff. This is bullied, actually being bullied, 76%. 50% of LGBT adults, but that's just the kids, right? Adults, 50%, over 50% of adults do not feel safe coming out of work in 2023. That's the why. This is the how, the other side. I think I'm getting a look, I'm out of time. But other side has some simple steps that you can take, all right? Last thing. You don't want to wear a rainbow ribbon? Okay, that's fine. We have ally stickers in English and Spanish. Come out. I'm not LGBT, but I support my LGBT siblings. All right, and all sorts of good stuff. Weartheribbon.org is where you can sign up your organization. And then my organization is LGBTnetwork.org. Up at the table, I have a calendar of events that we have, so that's my little kind of spiel.
Kerrie, thank you very much. And we did ask everyone to focus on what we can do. Again, this is the Belmore Merrick Democratic Club. Thank you for coming to speak about such a huge issue. It really is, I think, the most important issue, which is combating racism. And again, as Rodney King said, how can we all just get along? Our final speaker is Maria Shaikh. Maria Shaikh is a youth advocate. She's focused her efforts on empowering Muslim youth. She works she was the director of legal research for Phil Ramos. She is currently in law school, Hofstra Law School. So she's missing her study group to be here with us tonight. And with that, I give you Maria Shaikh.
Thank you so much. I'm a study group in the last row right over there, supporting
You brought your study?
Second year.
Did you bring your study group here?
Yes.
All right.
So thank you all for having me today, and thank you to the entire Bialor Merrick Democratic Club for hosting this event. I'm going to start off with a story. On the evening of March 17, 2021, Nafiha Ikram, a 20-year-old student at Hofstra University, was going home with her mother. It was a dark night, and as she started walking up her door on her driveway, a shadowy figure appeared, threw corrosive acid at her face, and ran away in a red car. Moments after that, her face started to burn. She couldn't breathe, her vision blurred. She struggled to scream, but she couldn't even scream because of the pain in her throat. Her mother threw her into a bathtub and tried to wash the acid off, but she couldn't figure out what was going on. She was eventually taken to the hospital, and that day changed her life forever. Her face was disfigured and could never recover from that. She underwent multiple surgeries, and she lost one of her eyes. 2 years later today, that individual is still out in the open and has not been caught. Nafiha was a prominent figure at her school and a representation of a strong Muslim woman. But unfortunately, she is also an example of the fear that Muslim women today live in. Muslim women like myself, like my classmates, like my friends here who wear the hijab. Following 9/11, there have been many negative sentiments towards the Muslim community. And all of this falls under the term Islamophobia, which is defined as the irrational fear or hatred of Islam and Muslims. This is what often manifests as discrimination and prejudice and even violence against Muslims. Antisemitism sentiment has been on an all-time high, especially since 2016, and it drastically rose in 2020 after the Muslim ban was put in place. 56% of Muslims feel discriminated on social media, 42% at school, and 49% when interacting with strangers in public. In 2022, half of the Muslim families with a child or children in grades kindergarten to 12th grade say their child has been bullied for their faith. And then alarmingly, 20% of Muslim families report bullying that happens nearly every single day. And probably one of the most sad studies is that 42% say they experience this by their own teacher. Now, the impact that this has on a child's growth is drastic. In fact, I spoke to a PTA member of the Bialor School District who mentioned that her child had been bullied by their own teacher. The manifestation of Islamophobia hinders the individual potential and community development. It doesn't just harm Muslims, it harms people who are perceived as Muslims. So there have been several attacks as someone from the Jewish community was attacked because people assumed they were Muslims. People from the Sikh community get attacked on a daily because people think they're Muslims. So Islamophobia is a branch of the three isms, and they come from the same root: anti-Semitism and anti-Black racism. What's insane is that there are more than 40 mosques in Long Island and over 100,000 Muslims in Long Island, but that this negative sentiment still exists. And for such a large amount of people, there is a huge lack of representation for the Muslim community. In addition, for Islamophobic attacks in the media, they're rarely ever mentioned as Islamophobic. It's always a random incident, a random mistake that happened, an accident. There was a recent news story where a taxi driver was attacked. He was an Uber driver, and he was attacked by two young girls who just drove his car over him. It was never reported as an Islamophobic attack, and this really hinders the data, because there is no accurate representation of how many Islamophobic attacks are actually taking place. And now there's a lot of local events as well. There is a mosque in Ronkonkoma, the Fatima al-Zahra Mosque, which was attacked with a firebomb on the front sign just last year. The MDQ Mosque in Bayshore, which is one of the larger mosques in Long Island, has faced several instances of vandalism. In 2016, a man threw hot coffee at a Muslim woman's face and called her a terrorist. A Muslim New York City transit worker was pushed down the stairs and told to go back to her own country. I was discussing this with one of my friends. As someone who was born and raised in Long Island, New York, when someone says go back to your own country, I'm a little bit confused. So for most of us here, especially people of my generation, the United States is our only home. So when someone tells us to go back to our own country, it's so hurtful. I'm here becoming an attorney, an immigration attorney, so that I can serve the constituents of this country. So I can give back to the great country that has given me the world. What other home is another home than the United States for me? And I actually have a whole list of other incidents, but I'm going to skip over that and just go to some of the ones that have impacted Bialor specifically. There was a parent who told me that her daughter was wearing the hijab in middle school, and she was very excited and passionate about wearing it. But eventually she stopped wearing it when she got to high school because she felt like she didn't belong with her hijab. She felt like she had to pick between her religion and her friends. And that's not a choice any child should have to make, at least not in this country. And there was another incident also in Bialor where a Muslim family had dog poop being smeared all over their door. And eventually it was reported, and thankfully that stopped. So I'm going to get to the solutions as well, because that's what we're here for. I have a few ideas, and we can discuss this in the question and answer as well. But cultural and sensitivity trainings are what I think would be very beneficial. There is a lot of confusion about what a Muslim is, what a hijab is, what Muslims can and cannot do, what halal food is, what are the dietary restrictions, and I understand that can be very confusing. It is for me as well. So if there were cultural sensitivity trainings for teachers, police officers, parents, and students, and other employers, I think that would drastically reduce the number of hate crimes that are occurring. If people just got the opportunity to understand what a Muslim is and what they stand for, the hate would automatically end. The word Islam means peace. How can you hate something like that? And Muslims should run and sit in on these trainings, because who better is going to understand Islam than a Muslim himself? And these trainings have a lot of benefits. They have improved community relations, reduced incidents of discrimination, and increased trust in law enforcement. There have been several incidents where police officers have come to a Muslim woman's door and they felt like she was maybe running away or something of that sort. A lot of Muslim women wear hijab and wear modest clothing, and they don't obviously wear that at home. So they need a few minutes to cover themselves when a police officer comes to their door. So if police officers got those trainings to wait a few seconds just to allow her to cover up and do what she needs to do for her religion, and carry her in a manner of respect according to her religion to the car, I think that would be very beneficial as well. And in addition, something very essential that almost all the members here mentioned is that Muslims need to report incidences that occur. There was an incident that was mentioned by one of the Nassau County residents, that there is a local mosque, the Islamic Center of Nassau, where someone drove by and called some of the parents terrorists in front of the children, and that was a horrible incident. But these incidences were never reported, And one of the key reasons incidents are not reported is because of fear and a lack of education. And this is something that Ms. Pena mentioned, is that there's a lot of self-hatred in our community as well. There's a lot of self-hatred and there's a lot of fear. Where my parents come from, there is a lot of political turmoil. And there, if you report anything or go to the police, it ends up harming you. They'll somehow get you wrapped up in a whole scandal and ruin your life. And that's what my parents always assumed happened here too. All they ever wanted to do was survive. Not live, not have rights, not openly practice their religion. For them it was enough if we had food at our table. My dad was shocked that I was going to college. So, for us, the bare minimum is enough. And I think that's why we don't report incidences, because we think that's just going to get us in trouble. And community involvement. Please come to our local mosque. We would love to have you there. We could have a meal together, we could pray together, and we'll understand that we're not all that different. The MDQ Mosque has a lot of interfaith events, and there's a lot of members from the Jewish community that come there. And it's honestly, it was one of my favorite things growing up, was going to interfaith events at my mosque, and I think those are very beneficial. So, after hearing what everyone here has to say, I cut down a lot of what I wanted to say, because I think the issue is all the same. It's that hate impacts almost every community. Now, Nafiha, our member from the first segment of what I was saying, the individual who had an acid burn, she went back to Hofstra and is completing her education now. She still is facing a lot of health concerns, but one thing that she mentioned was that this incident occurred to stop her. It was to push her down, but that's the opposite of what we want to do. In the face of hate, we need to push back and move forward together. Thank you.
Again, great job by Maria, Pakistani American Community Excellence, and all our speakers. So now the Belmont Merrick Democratic